Howdy my friends and welcome to the channel today. I'm Luke, Thunderhead289 here on YouTube. And today we're going to pull this old 67 Beetle out of here. Now I've had this thing for 4 or 5 years, and you know it's bad when you have enough vehicles that the whole revival thing starts to be on your own stuff. So originally my wife and I bought this. She's always loved Beetles. We've had a couple of them, but really it's never panned out. Life's gotten in the way. And then the same thing happened with this one where it got close a little while ago, you know, and then it just got shoved in the corner of the garage and never really finished up. So a little bit of backstory on this car. It had been driven all up until the early 80s, and then it had an engine fire, which accounts for this little burned up area on the back of the hood or trunk or whatever you want to call it on these things. And then it was parked. And it sat on a property for a long time. Eventually the fella passed away, and then there was an estate sale, and then I picked the thing up, I guess. So I went through and piecemealed a lot of it back together, but we're just about there. I have a few more things to finish up, and then finally I can fire it up and drive the thing. But it's close, but you know, like I said, life got in the way, and here we are. So with that, let's jump right in. All right, so after going to war with old man Pythagoras and getting everything out of the way, so you know we could kind of get the Beetle out to some degree, at least to where we can work on it. We can get a good look. You know, it's a pretty decent car, especially for being a Midwestern car all its life. It's not very rotted out. They must not have drove it in winter too much, so that's why I was pretty keen on picking up the thing. Now this particular unit is a 67 year, which still has a lot of the ornate styling, you know, has the cool bumpers on the front. If I can get over all this without spearing myself, you know, pretty good looking little rig. Had a roof rack on it and everything, so you know, I don't know, as far as Beetles go, this was a pretty good looking car. Oh, again, if I don't fall over here. But you know, with the engine fire and everything, basically I got everything kind of put back together some years back, but it doesn't have a functioning generator. And the reason I stopped is because I always thought you had to drop the entire engine to be able to change these out. But today I'm feeling a little ornery. I'm gonna try and do the thing without dropping the engine, which will probably be terrible, but if I can do it, you know, then really that's the last piece to getting this car on the road, and I can finish what I started like 5 years ago. Unfortunately, this car has had to spend some time in kind of a humid environment. I'm just hoping, since it's the original engine, it's burned enough oil in its day that the cylinders are still loose, and it looks like it is still all right. Oh, that sounded interesting. Okay, so we're in good shape there. I guess we're gonna pull the generator. I'm gonna eat my words here, maybe. We'll see. So far so good, just broke the tip off my screwdriver. Oh boy. You're gonna fight me, aren't you? I know you are. That's the Volkswagen way, at least my experience. There's apparently a rag in the generator fan. So the way a Beetle works is the alternator, of course, is the only thing driven from the crank. It's air cooled, so we don't have a water pump, of course. And then you have to have all this shrouding intact, and then basically the alternator on the other side of it has a big fan, and that's what this cover plate is for. and that fan is actually what cools the engine. So if you're missing some of your shrouding and stuff, you can have a lot of overheating issues with your Volkswagen, which is kind of funny because, you know, it's air cooled. A quick search on the Google Foo here is telling me that that nut on the back of the fan is a 36 millimeter. And since I work on mostly American cars, I don't have that guy, which I figured it'd be something obscure like everything else on a Beetle. So I'll have to run to, you know, a tool store and pick one of those up here. So I wanted to check that early today, you know, so I could be ahead of the game. We're not going to play around today. I'm going to give myself a little more room. This has been the most obstinate vehicle the whole time I've owned it. Most difficult one I've ever had to try and get running. Just because everything fights me along the way. I think we're going to pull the hood here, or the trunk, or whatever you'd consider it, so we can get a little more access to this thing. So we're going to get it today. It's not going to win this time. Ooh. Oh man. There we go. Much better. What an obstinate son of a gun. Definitely not my favorite thing to do. Definitely not something you'd want to do to a good generator. Alright, just play nice, would you? Just for once. There we go. We're getting there. There was a time when I tried to get into this thing and check it out and rewire it, but whatever went wrong is somewhere back in this area, and you can see the whole thing's been completely torched. So it probably melted all the coating off the coils in the motor, and then, you know, it's just a dead short somewhere. And I think, if I remember right from all those years back, that's what I was able to determine, that it's shorted somewhere to the case, and therefore, you know, the thing don't work too good. Science. Some shims in here that are probably extremely important. It's probably going to be fun to pry off. Again, not something I'd typically want to do to a good generator. Don't necessarily need to pry that off just yet. Ooh boy, it's a hot son of a gun. But just curious to see how much of a bear this is going to be. Gonna play nice. There we go. Oh, that's 1,000,000 degrees. Thing's got a ton of end play. If it wasn't burned up, you know, she's definitely wore out. It's probably the original unit. Interesting. The generator has a keyway, and so does the little pulley piece here, but there was no Woodruff key in there. Interesting. So might want to do something about that, because I'm going to want that guy to stick in place when I bust that jam nut in the back. And would you look at that, lucky enough for me, the new one has the Woodruff key in there, so I'm going to steal it and put it on this guy, just to give us, again, something to hold on to when we're trying to break that back nut, which I assume is going to be quite the task. So with that, we're down to the frightening part of this whole deal, where I need to run to Menards or something and get like a 36 millimeter so I can grab onto the back of this generator and then hopefully hold on to it right here and break that nut loose without, you know, shredding the woodruff key. We'll soon see. So, what do we want to drive today? Oh, probably the daily driver, the Maverick. A big V8 in a little car is just a lot of fun. Just gobs of low-end torque in this thing. Just went up a big hill, rocking like 1500 RPM in fourth gear. This car just doesn't care, which is the antithesis to the Volkswagen because they are extremely underpowered. It's like a go-kart that's a slow kart. Oh boy. Maybe I'll like it when I'm done here and I get it running. Go. Hopefully we can fit that back behind the fan shroud here. For such a little car, like gee whiz, it has some really big nuts on it. Oh boy. Just barely fits. If you make your hand as flat as a pancake, I guess. Oh boy. Oh, money. Either it's off or I broke something. If I'm lucky, there's the little lock washer. If I'm lucky, the nut fell down in the fan itself. Their socket slid out of there. Oh, we're extra lucky because the nut is inside of our socket wrench. Oh boy, that was the scary part. Alright, I think we're good. If I had to guess, there's going to be some shims between the fan and all this assembly so that it doesn't hit on the shrouding, but just want to make sure we don't drop those behind. But now I think we can pop all of our bolts, and thankfully we're at the point where we can slide this bad boy out of here. Not done fighting me, are you? Rust welded on there pretty good. The sheet come out. I think the trick here is that fan has no possible way to come out of there. Might want to do a little looking, see if there was any shims that were behind this thing that fell out. But just like that, generator's out and we didn't pull the engine. Looks like I spoke too soon there. Apparently on the single port, you have enough on the intake where you can take this guy, and once the generator's off, you can actually pull the cooling fan out. So that's pretty cool. In here we actually have the Beetle oil cooler and everything else. Pretty nifty. Oh hey, I knew I saw some shims fall out. I was a little concerned. They're sitting down here. Again, the purpose of these is they're behind the fan so the fan doesn't rub on the housing. So glad we didn't lose those forever. So I got the old generator disassembled. We're just getting a look at the new one, and we need to polarize it being a generator before we install it, and it's just a good way to verify that everything's good and it's going to charge up for us. But I was poking around here in the old 65, which I drove back in like 2015, 2014, I found an old photo album thing here in the car, and ironically I found a picture of our old Beetle that we had had at one point. This is Emily, long before she was my wife, probably like 8 years ago. And that was our old 69 that we got going. And then, you know, money was tight and things were what they were, and we sold that car. So this is our redemption vehicle this time around. But anyway, all that aside, let me show you how to hook this up and polarize the thing. One thing to point out is this is the shroud that bolts to the back of the generator that hooks it up to the fan and all that. And basically, I noticed it has this little port on it, and I assume that's for actually cooling the generator. So, you know, I don't know if you're working on a Beetle, it's probably pretty important to have that in the right location. And when I took it off the old one, it's opposing the terminals. You see it can go on one of two ways here. So terminals on top, this open port is pointing towards the bottom. But with that, let me get the wires all hooked up on the generator, and basically we'll polarize the thing, and then we'll know it's good for when we install it. All right, so we got our 12-volt jump pack here. We're good and charged up. Basically we have our DF terminal hooked to a case ground, and then we have the case ground hooked to the negative side of our jump pack. Then we have our positive on D+, and when we touch the positive on the jump pack, in theory this thing should spin, and you only want to do this for a few seconds. You know, too long and you could burn it up, but really this is just a quick way to polarize the generator. So here we go. There we go. That's really all we need. Just something real quick, and then we're good to go. Obviously you want to use two hands ideally so the thing doesn't run off the bench on you. So everything's good. Our housing is installed correctly where our opening is on the bottom opposing the terminals, and I don't think we're going to have any issues. Generators are an interesting thing. They're basically a glorified electric motor that are set up when wired into the vehicle that they can't basically power themselves either by a diode or something or other. But when you spin an electric motor forcibly, it just generates power. So some old school tech there versus an alternator, I guess. Pretty neat old stuff. All right, gearing up for the great assault here to try and get this thing back in. You know, it should be as simple as putting it back together the same way it came apart, but you know, I've seen this movie before and I know better, and it's going to be pretty difficult to get this all situated. The first thing I'm concerned about is obviously our spacer rings. I don't want those to fall down into the case. So I'm just using my old friend the grease gun here to give the spacers, you know, some tackiness, I guess, for lack of a better term, so that they stick together, and when I throw it in the housing, it doesn't try and, you know, they don't try and fall out before I can get the fan on. You see, it's kind of keyed in a way, and I assume I'll be jostling it around ever so slightly. So hopefully that does the trick. Maybe. Pretty snug fit on that guy. Alright, so we got it clocked upright. This goes in here like such. I'm going to clock this the exact same way. Just try and be as careful as possible as I drop it in, naturally. Need someone with smaller hands to be doing this. Bend my arm at a nice 100-degree angle here. Sweet. Don't move, it's on there. Alright, we're going to do the same with grease on our lock nut, and then get this bad boy spun on there. Not too bad, really. For once, that was too easy. Nice. Maybe you're coming around, you're deciding you're going to be nice to me finally. Much appreciated. right, my friends, well that's that. We got the generator all installed, we polarized the unit, and if all the other electrical on the vehicle is okay, you know, then I imagine we'll be able to get her to light off no problem, and she'll be charging. And really, aside from the tires being completely, absolutely dry rotted and needing to be replaced, it's probably going to be pretty close to roadworthy. Of course, we'll go through and change all the fluids. But anyway, I got to hit the road for a family get-together at this point, so catch us for the next one, where we'll fill it with fuel and hit the key and see what she does. I have high hopes for you, little buddy. Don't prove me wrong. You've been good today. All right, battery is in, at least battery in the form of a jump pack. I got it kind of set up so the positive can't land on anything that's a ground and create a dead short. The key's in. We're in neutral. Let's just see if the thing will crank. If I can get the key to turn. Remember, there's some trick to this thing. Down. Oh boy, the ballad of old cars here. Maybe it's like a little out and down. There we go. Got some signs of life. Let's see if she cranks. Okay.